One of the features that really impressed me was the zoom range. It's advertised as a 30x zoom, and sometimes those numbers can seem a little ambiguous. You don't really know what that translates to in your room or to feet or yards or whatever. And so when we started playing with that zoom, I was blown away at how long that camera could reach out and get a shot. The zoom by far was probably the most impressive part of the camera, just how tight it could get. And then when it got in there tight, it had a nice clean shot.
Welcome back to Church Production. I'm Marcel Patillo. So while most of us have camera ops or volunteers as camera ops, sometimes you want a camera in a position where a camera op just couldn't be, like under the balcony or maybe on stage or even in the rigging on stage up in the ceiling. Marshall PTZ cameras could not be a better solution for a situation like this. So we sent some Marshall PTZ cameras over to our friends at Church at Rock Creek in Little Rock, Arkansas to see how it'd help with their Sunday live service. But before we get started, give this video a like and subscribe to the Church Production YouTube channel.
So I'm Nick Burt. I'm the Executive Director of Communications at the Church at Rock Creek. We're in Little Rock, Arkansas, right in the middle of the state. I specialize in the area of video, as well as do communications and the marketing side here at the church as well. So we had a chance to evaluate and use the Marshall CV730, the PTZ camera. It was a great camera for what we were trying to use. It was a 4K capable camera, although we just used it at 1080. It had a broad range of movements, and it had a really incredible zoom at 30x. It was a really good camera for what we needed to use it for.
While some companies really want to kind of string you along and keep you purchasing, they give you what you need for now, and then you have to buy the new thing, and then later on you got to buy the new thing, and it can go on forever. But Marshall is not one of those companies. They make products that are quality, built to last, and are built with forward and future thinking. These cameras that we sent to Church at Rock Creek are not only extremely compact, but they can do 4K resolution at 60 frames a second. And as I've said before, I don't know of a lot of streaming platforms like YouTube or Facebook that can do live streaming at 4K, let alone at 60 frames a second. And you can ensure that what you're intaking, if you can intake 4K resolution at 60 frames a second, then you have footage that's also future-proofed. But before we get to all those technical details, let's hear about first impressions from Nick Burt.
When we received the Marshall CV730, first off, the packaging was great, as is everything from Marshall. It was well protected. Everything was shrink wrapped or in foam inserts, so that's really comforting to know. You get a really nice, expensive camera, and it's taken care of in the shipping process. But as I was unboxing it, I was impressed with pretty much everything you need to use the camera is in the box. There's some mounting brackets, there's cabling, there's remotes, there's the camera itself. And it was really easy to take out to kind of figure out what goes where. And then just with the camera itself, I was very impressed with how sturdy it felt. It had quite a bit of weight to it, not in a bad way, but it didn't feel cheap or like it was gonna break real easily. It felt very sturdy and robust. And it was a pleasant unboxing experience. It was all right there, and everything you needed to get going was available to you.
So while I already mentioned the 4K at 60p, there are many more features that the Marshall PTZ cameras have to offer. There's zoom range and ease of use and stability and overall image quality. Nick goes on to explain what he found compelling in the features of the Marshall PTZ.
One of the features that really impressed me was the zoom range. It's advertised as a 30x zoom, and sometimes those numbers can seem a little ambiguous. You don't really know what that translates to in your room or to feet or yards or whatever. And so when we started playing with that zoom, I was blown away at how long that camera could reach out and get a shot. The zoom by far was probably the most impressive part of the camera, just how tight it could get. And then when it got in there tight, it had a nice clean shot. In the past, I've not been a big fan of PTZ cameras just because the image quality usually struggles a bit. And with this camera, it's a 4K camera, but in our application, we used it at 1080p 5994. And I thought the quality was on par with all the other cameras we use. We have a couple of other Marshall cameras we use on stage. We have Panasonic broadcast cameras that we've been using, but you couldn't look at the image and say, That's a PTZ camera. You really could blend it in with all of our cameras quite well.
I am a big resolution guy, and in most situations, I'm going to choose the best resolution we can get, no matter what we are streaming in or what our final delivery is. But at the very least, in shooting in 4K, you're future-proofing yourself when you record that 4K footage for future videos, for future recaps, for future promotions. And the Marshall PTZ cameras at their 4K 60 resolution are a great way to future-proof yourself.
With the camera being a 4K camera and using it in a 1080 application, I felt like the image quality was just made better by that. I love using equipment that's not at the highest end of its range. I feel like I always get a better image out of that. And I love having the ability to go up to a 4K product if I needed that. Our whole system runs 1080p right now, so we didn't have a need for that, but just knowing that that's available, it helps to soften the blow of that expense a little bit, especially if you're trying to sell it to an executive pastor or somebody who makes the spending decisions, that you're really buying a product that can work for you right now. And if you go to 4K in the future, that product can transition to that as well.
So the name of the game in churches is typically to run lean and mean, which means with a very small crew, especially during the week when you have less volunteer availability and you may just have an audio engineer or one director kind of running things. That could be for a Bible study or a midweek worship session that you still want to record. And PTZ cameras are a great way to still have full control when you have a very tiny team.
So with the Marshall CV730, we used it in two different ways. We just put in a brand new camera suite of both manned and static cameras up on stage. And so we were trying to find a use for it. And one of the uses we used it for was throughout the week, we have a couple of Bible studies that happen. And they're typically a one-man band tech team. So someone runs sound, lights, slides, and video because there's just not a whole lot going on. The second use we found for the Marshall CV730 was using it as a stage camera. So we put it up on our stage on top of a truss, and we're able to use it to get creative cutaway shots of our band, a unique angle of the stage. And it was really nice to have the ability to move it, to pan it, to tilt it, and to zoom. Because, we could get shots of guitarists, we could get shots of our keyboard players, we could get shots of the worship team in the room. It really just allowed us to get creative with what we could get. And I really liked the preset option for that, because I would come in during rehearsal, set up all of our shots, and as I'm calling the shots, I can just sit down and press buttons to call up a preset, and it would get those shots for me.
Whether you use HDMI or SDI or even fiber to run your cables from front of house or the production room to your cameras, it can be quite complicated to set up your cameras from one side of your sanctuary all the way to the other side of the sanctuary. So I was anxious to hear from Nick what it was like setting up these cameras for the first time in their sanctuary.
So when we received the Marshall CV730, it was really my first time to set up a PTZ camera. I've used plenty of them, but I had never been around for the setup and the initialization part of a PTZ camera. And so I was able to talk with Marshall technical support to a guy named Steven. And he was immensely helpful in setting the camera up. I had tried a couple of times just plugging an Ethernet cable directly from the controller to the camera, but we wanted to use it a little more creatively than that. So he was able to go in and tell me how to change the IP address on the camera, change the IP address on the controller, and make some adjustments to the MAC address and those sorts of things. And so in the initialization and setup process, Marshall was very helpful on the technical support side to set up the camera. They also emailed me some PDF guides and some how to use the camera, and so that was very helpful as well.
So a big thank you to Marshall for sending these cameras out, as well as to Nick and the whole staff at Church at Rock Creek for taking the time, setting these cameras up in your system, and giving us your insight on how they enhance your look at Church at Rock Creek. Of course, make sure to subscribe to the Church Production YouTube channel and check out churchproduction.com for new articles and insights on everything church production. Now, as always, I'm Marcel Patillo, and I'll see you all in the next one.